HTML5.
HTML5 is a markup language used for structuring and presenting content for the World Wide Web and a core technology of the Internet. It is the fifth revision of the HTML standard and, as of December 2012, is a candidate recommendation of the World Wide Web Consortium. Its core aims have been to improve the language with support for the latest multimedia while keeping it easily readable by humans and consistently understood by computers and devices. HTML5 is intended to subsume not only HTML4, but also XHTML1 and DOM Level 2 HTML. Following its immediate predecessors HTML 4.01 and XHTML 1.1, HTML5 is a response to the fact that the HTML and XHTML in common use on the World Wide Web are a mixture of features introduced by various specifications, along with those introduced by software products such as web browsers, those established by common practice, and the many syntax errors in existing web documents. It is also an attempt to define a single markup language that can be written in either HTML or XHTML syntax. It includes detailed processing models to encourage more interoperable implementations. It extends, improves and rationalizes the markup available for documents, and introduces markup and application programming interfaces, APIs, for complex web applications. For the same reasons, HTML5 is also a potential candidate for cross-platform mobile applications. Many features of HTML5 have been built with the consideration of being able to run on low-powered devices such as smartphones and tablets. In December 2011, research firm Strategy Analytics forecast sales of HTML5-compatible phones would top 1 billion in 2013. In particular, HTML5 adds many new syntactic features. These include the new less than videa greater than, less than audio greater than and less than canvas greater than elements, as well as the integration of scalable vector graphics, SVG, content, that replaces the uses of generic less than object greater than tags, and mathml for mathematical formulas. These features are designed to make it easy to include and handle multimedia and graphical content on the web without having to resort to proprietary plugins and APIs. Other new elements, such as less than section greater than, less than article greater than, less than header greater than and less than narrator than, are designed to enrich the semantic content of documents. New attributes have been introduced for the same purpose, while some elements and attributes have been removed. Some elements, such as less than a greater than, less than cite a greater than and less than mena greater than have been changed, redefined or standardized. The APIs and Document Object Model, DOM, are no longer afterthoughts, but are fundamental parts of the HTML5 specification. HTML5 also defines in some detail the required processing for invalid documents so that syntax errors will be treated uniformly by all conforming browsers and other user agents.
History.
The Web Hypertext Application Technology Working Group, WHATWG, began work on the new standard in 2004. At that time, HTML 4.01 had not been updated since 2000, and the World Wide Web Consortium, W3C, was focusing future developments on XHTML 2.0. In 2009, the W3C allowed the XHTML 2.0 Working Group's charter to expire and decided not to renew it. W3C and WHATWG are currently working together on the development of HTML5. While HTML5 is often compared to Flash, the two technologies are very different. Both include features for playing audio and video within web pages, and for using scalable vector graphics. HTML5 on its own cannot be used for animation and interactivity, it must be supplemented with CSS3 or JavaScript. There are many Flash capabilities that have no direct counterpart in HTML5. See comparison of HTML5 and Flash. Although HTML5 has been well known among web developers for years, It became the topic of mainstream media around April 2010 after Apple Incorporated's then CEO Steve Jobs issued a public letter titled Thoughts on Flash, where he concludes that Flash is no longer necessary to watch video or consume any kind of web content, and that new open standards created in the mobile era, such as HTML5, will win. This sparked a debate in web development circles where some suggested that while HTML5 provides enhanced functionality, developers must consider the varying browser support of the different parts of the standard as well as other functionality differences between HTML5 and Flash. In early November 2011, Adobe announced that it will discontinue development of Flash for mobile devices and reorient its efforts in developing tools utilizing HTML5.
Standardization process.
The Mozilla Foundation and Opera Software presented a position paper at a World Wide Web Consortium (W3C) workshop in June 2004, focusing on developing technologies that are backward compatible with existing browsers, including an initial draft specification of Web Forms 2.0. The workshop concluded with a vote, 8 for, 14 against, for continuing work on HTML. Later that month, work based upon that position paper moved to the newly formed Web Hypertext Application Technology Working Group, WHATWG, and a second draft, Web Applications 1.0, was also announced. The two specifications will later merge to form HTML5. The HTML5 specification was adopted as the starting point of the work of the new HTML Working Group of the W3C in 2007. WHATWG published the first public working draft of the specification on January 22, 2008. Parts of HTML5 have been implemented in browsers despite the whole specification not yet having reached final recommendation status. On February 14, 2011, the W3C extended the charter of its HTML Working Group with clear milestones for HTML5. In May 2011, the working group advanced HTML5 to last call, an invitation to communities inside and outside W3C to confirm the technical soundness of the specification. The W3C is developing a comprehensive test suite to achieve broad interoperability for the full specification by 2014, which is now the target date for recommendation. In January 2011, the WHATWG renamed its HTML5 Living Standard to HTML. The W3C nevertheless continues its project to release HTML5. In July 2012, WHATWG and W3C decided on a degree of separation. W3C will continue the HTML5 specification work, focusing on a single definitive standard, which is considered as a snapshot by WHATWG. The WHATWG organization will continue its work with HTML5 as a living standard. The concept of a living standard is that it is never complete and is always being updated and improved. New features can be added but functionality will not be removed. In December 2012, W3C designated HTML5 as a candidate recommendation. The criterion for advancement to W3C recommendation is 100% complete and fully interoperable implementations.
Plan 2014.
In September 2012, the W3C proposed a plan to release a stable HTML5 recommendation by the end of 2014 and an HTML 5.1 specification recommendation by the end of 2016. The combined timelines for HTML 5.0, HTML 5.1 and HTML 5.2. The W3C proposed a greater reliance on modularity as a key part of the plan to make faster progress, meaning identifying specific features either proposed or already existing in the spec, and advancing them as separate specifications. Some technologies that were originally defined in HTML5 itself are now defined in separate specifications. HTML Working Group, Microdata, HTML Canvas 2D Context, Web Apps WG, Web Messaging, Web Workers, Web Storage, WebSocket API, Server-Sent Events, IETF High by WG, WebSocket Protocol, WebRTC-WG, WebRTC, W3C Web Media Text Track CG, WebVTT. Some specifications that were initially developed standalone have been adapted as HTML5 extensions or features by reference, SVG, MathML, WAIREA.
Features. Markup.
HTML5 introduces elements and attributes that reflect typical usage on modern websites. Some of them are semantic replacements for common uses of generic block, less than div greater than, and inline, less than span greater than, elements, for example less than nav greater than, website navigation block, less than footer greater than, usually referring to bottom of web page or to last lines of HTML code, or less than audio greater than and less than video greater than instead of less than object greater than. Some deprecated elements from HTML 4.01 have been dropped, including purely presentational elements such as less than font greater than and less than center greater than, whose effects have long been superseded by the more capable cascading style sheets. There is also a renewed emphasis on the importance of DOM scripting, for example, JavaScript, in web behavior. The HTML5 syntax is no longer based on SGML despite the similarity of its markup. It has, however, been designed to be backward compatible with common parsing of older versions of HTML. It comes with a new introductory line that looks like an SGML document type declaration, less than. Doc type HTML greater than, which triggers the standards compliant rendering mode. As of January 5, 2009, HTML5 also includes Web Forms 2.0, a previously separate WHATWG specification.
New APIs.
In addition to specifying markup, HTML5 specifies scripting application programming interfaces, APIs, that can be used with JavaScript. Existing Document Object Model, DOM, interfaces are extended and de facto features documented. There are also new APIs, such as the Canvas element for immediate mode 2D drawing. See Canvas 2D API Specification 1.0 Specification, Timed Media Playback, Offline Web Applications, Document Editing, Drag and Drop, Cross-Document Messaging, Browser History Management, MIME Type and Protocol Handler Registration, Microdata, Web Storage, a key-value pair storage framework that provides behavior similar to cookies but with larger storage capacity and improved API. Not all of the above technologies are included in the W3C HTML5 specification, though they are in the WHATWG HTML specification. Some related technologies, which are not part of either the W3C HTML5 or the WHATWG HTML specification, are as follows. The W3C publishes specifications for these separately. Geolocation, Web SQL database, a local SQL database, no longer maintained. The Index Database API, an indexed hierarchical key-value store, formerly WebSimpleDB, HTML5 File API, handles file uploads and file manipulation, directories and system, an API intended to satisfy client-side storage use cases not well served by databases, File Writer, an API for writing to files from web applications, Web Audio API, a high-level JavaScript API for processing and synthesizing audio in web applications, ClassList API. HTML5 cannot provide animation within web pages. Additional JavaScript or CSS3 functionality is necessary for animating HTML elements. Animation is also possible using JavaScript and HTML4, and with an SVG element through SMIL, although browser support of the latter remains uneven as of 2011.
XHTML5 XML Serialized HTML5.
XML documents must be served with an XML Internet Media Type. often called MIME types such as application XHTML plus XML or application XML, and must conform to strict, well-formed syntax of XML. XHTML5 is simply XML serialized HTML5 data, for example not having any unclosed tags, sent with one of XML media types. HTML that has been written to conform to both the HTML and XHTML specifications, and which will therefore produce the same DOM tree whether parsed as HTML or XML, is termed polyglot markup.
Error handling.
HTML5 is designed so that old browsers can safely ignore new HTML5 constructs. In contrast to HTML 4.01, the HTML5 specification gives detailed rules for lexing and parsing, with the intent that different compliant browsers will produce the same result in the case of incorrect syntax. Although HTML5 now defines a consistent behavior for tag soup documents, those documents are not regarded as conforming to the HTML5 standard.
Popularity.
According to a report released on September 30, 2011, 34 of the world's top 100 websites were using HTML5, the adoption led by search engines and social networks. Another report released in August 2013 has shown that 153 of the Fortune 500 U.S. companies already implemented HTML5 on their corporate websites. As of 2013, HTML5 is at least partially supported by most popular layout engines.
Differences from HTML 4.01 and XHTML1. X.
The following is a cursory list of differences and some specific examples. New parsing rules, oriented towards flexible parsing and compatibility. Not based on SGML. Ability to use inline SVG and MathML in text HTML, new elements, article, aside, audio, die, canvas, command, data, datalist, details, embed, fig caption, figure, footer, header, keygen, mark, meter, nav, output, progress, RP, RT, Ruby, section, source, summary, time, track, video, WBR. New types of form controls, dates and times, email, or, search, number, range, tell, color, new attributes, charset, onMeter, async, onScript, global attributes, that can be applied for every element, id, tab-index, hidden, data, custom data attributes, deprecated elements will be dropped altogether, acronym, applet, base font, big, center, font, frame, from asset, isindex, no frames, strike, tt. dev.w3.org provides the latest editor's draft of HTML5 differences from HTML4, which provides a complete outline of additions, removals and changes between HTML5 and HTML4.
Logo.
On January 18, 2011, the W3C introduced a logo to represent the use of or interest in HTML5. Unlike other badges previously issued by the W3C, it does not imply validity or conformance to a certain standard. As of April 1, 2011, this logo is official. When initially presenting it to the public, the W3C announced the HTML5 logo as a general-purpose visual identity for a broad set of open web technologies, including HTML5, CSS, SVG, WOFF, and others. Some web standard advocates, including the Web Standards Project, criticized the definition of HTML5 as an umbrella term, pointing out the blurring of terminology and the potential for miscommunication. 3 days later, the W3C responded to community feedback and changed the logo's definition, dropping the enumeration of related technologies. The W3C then say the logo represents HTML5, the cornerstone for modern web applications.
Digital rights management.
Industrial players including the BBC, Google, Microsoft, and Netflix have been lobbying for the inclusion of encrypted media extensions, a form of digital rights management, DRM, into the HTML5 standard. As of the end of 2012 and the beginning of 2013, 27 organizations including the Free Software Foundation have started a campaign against including digital rights management in the HTML5 standard. However, in late September 2013, the W3C HTML working group decided that encrypted media extensions, a form of DRM, was in scope, and will potentially be included in the HTML 5.1 standard. WHATWG's HTML Living Standard continued to be developed without DRM-enabled proposals. Some proponents of AIM say it would help replace plugins like Flash with the W3C standard. Opponents point out that AIM itself is just an architecture for a DRM plugin mechanism. The initial enablers for DRM in HTML5 were Google and Microsoft. Supporters also included Adobe,